Okay, we should be live. We'll share it everywhere and get started here shortly. If people are joining us, we're going to start right at 7 o'clock. Please like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff here. We'll be starting soon. Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to week 4 of the 2026 legislative session. Thank you for joining us on this Free State Colorado live stream. We got an action-packed night this evening. So much interesting news to talk about. We're going to make you one of the most informed people in Colorado politics watching this. We have an amazing guest joining us at 7:30, Senator Zamora Wilson, who has quickly become one of the best pro-liberty senators in the state of Colorado. And we got Michael Vance. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Brandon. Looking forward to getting this thing started. There's been a lot that's happened, and we're really ramping up into the legislative session this week. You can really see it when you look at all the bills that are coming down the pike.
Definitely. Those first few weeks were really just the SMART Act hearings. I mean, important stuff, presentations from all the executive departments to the legislature. But now we're seeing bills drop. I've heard there's going to be about 100 more bills that drop probably tomorrow, the next round. So it's really getting there, folks. We really need you to participate, have a voice, get involved, and let's take back our government. You know, we deserve to be free. We deserve to keep the money we make. We will be a free state, but it all starts with us paying attention, knowing what's happening, supporting the good pro-liberty legislators, and getting the bad ones out of office, but we can do it, and we just need your help here. So, Michael, you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's get into it, Brandon.
Perfect. So we'll pull up the presentation here. We got a lot to talk about, lots of good bills. I should say lots of bad bills going through the session this week, and great opportunities for you to testify and have a voice in our government here. So, perfecto. We're going to have a lot of fun. And at 7:30, we're having Senator Zamora Wilson start. But to start, we're going to go ahead and go over the schedule here. So, 7 p.m. to 7:30, we're going to talk about some of the biggest news stories of the week, some really important stuff that's happening down at the state capitol. 7:30, our guest, and then she'll be here till about 8. And then we're going to talk about some of the bills being heard this week. So this, folks, is where you can have a voice in the process. You have opportunities to testify, to provide your knowledge and expertise to the legislation that's coming through the Capitol. And it is important, regardless of what anybody else says, it is important. There is value there, and we're going to talk about some of the big bills. And if you can do it over Zoom, that's fine. If you can show up in person, even better. Then about 8:30, as we do every week, we're going to give you updates on some of the biggest bills, some of the most important and impactful pieces of legislation going through the state capitol this year. We track these bills from day one to the very end, from when they're introduced to the very end of the session. And so this will be your place. A resource every week. You can check in and say, hey, what's going on with that big bill I've been hearing about in the news? Because, folks, there's not really a lot of people reporting on local politics here in Colorado. There's some great reporters out there. We have Complete Colorado, Corey Gaines, and others. But ultimately, there's so much happening. We need more out there, and a lot of great podcasters too, like Big Timber Lodge and others. So here's some of the big news of the week. Michael, you want to start us off talking about what's been going on this last week?
Absolutely. If you guys haven't been paying attention, about a year ago, Senator Sonia Jacques Lewis, I have a hard time pronouncing her last name. She ended up getting convicted for ethics complaints. There were a lot of issues surrounding her and her aides and how she was treating them. A lot of people accused her of mistreating her aides. And she ended up receiving a ethics committee hearing investigation, and they ended up taking away her aides. While she, as a part of that ethics investigation, Senator Jacques Lewis decided to uh, call in a few favors, ask for a few recommendations, etc. And there happened to be one from a former aide. Well, it turns out the recommendation from her former aide was not actually accurate. Her husband was listening to the hearing and they heard her name. The Nothing about the letter of recommendation sounded like this woman, and she was very offended, felt very, very hurt, very violated by this action, and she called it out. And this week, she was actually convicted by a jury. In fact, if you were paying attention, I know a few of us were, you could actually hear the senadora Julie Gonzalez actually testify against Senator Jacques Lewis. So very, very stunning revelations. Very interesting to see what's going on down at the Capitol and actually see one of these progressive Democrats actually get taken down for some unethical behavior.
Shocker, right? We got some of these far left activists down there pushing radical gun control, taking away our rights, interfering with family relationships, and chasing businesses out of Colorado. Shocker that they are doing some unethical behavior and, yeah, convicted, attempt to influence a public figure, forgery. I'm curious to see where her sentence is going to be. That's going to be later in February, I was seeing. So, kind of towards the end of the month. I think we still got about 3 weeks for that. But I'm really curious to see if she gets probation. There needs to be public outcry. If she gets just a slap on the wrist and they let her out, if she doesn't serve as much time as Tina Peters was sentenced with for the same charges of attempting to influence a public figure, forgery, this and that, then, there needs to be some outcry here, folks. This is obviously such a double standard. We're all expecting it. I mean, how cynical are we in Colorado where we expect these Democrat legislators to get off with no real crime? I mean, and it'd be kind of fitting, right? Because I'm sure Senator Jaquez Lewis probably passed legislation to make life easier for criminals. Maybe she never expected that she'd be one of those criminals, but we will find out and we will see. So crazy stuff. Please, if you got any rumors, gossip, any fun political news, share it in the chat or send us a message. We love sharing that and getting into some of the details here. But then, Michael, what happened on Friday? I heard there was a big event down at the state capitol, big testimony there for the Public Utilities Commission. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you can see here Rep. Ken DeGraff called this out. Very grateful for his desire and willingness to let the public know what's going on. Basically, the Public Utilities Commission, we've seen a lot of issues over the last few months, over the last couple of years, really rise up in Colorado. Affordability is a major issue, particularly when it comes to the PUC and what's going on in our legislature and the result of the legislature's actions affecting affordability in Colorado, the ability for our energy producers to be able to produce the appropriate amount of energy so that way we can survive. It's getting cold. We recently had a cold snap and we all know that's going to affect energy prices for all of us. I'm really concerned about what a lot of people's uh, bills are going to look like here coming up in February when we see the sticker shock of how much it costs us to basically survive at this point. Um, so with that being said, Rep. Kindercraft put out he put out the call for everyone to reach out and make your voices heard down at the Capitol because there was a hearing for the Public Utilities Commission.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, Ken DeGraff, Representative DeGraff, has been doing a phenomenal job of rallying the troops, getting people to show up and have a voice. And there was this big, committee meeting where a lot of people showed up for this joint committee meeting to speak against the Public Utilities Commission. They got hammered by the people. People were giving them a hard time, so it was great to see. So make sure you're following Representative Ken DeGraff and other Liberty leaders. We got to stay on top of this, and we need to have a voice. We really do. We can't let these people get away with what they're doing without at least challenging them verbally and show up to these committee hearings, get video, get pictures, do videos down there, find out what's going on and have an impact. But some of the other stories this week, or one of the other big ones that I think is pretty interesting here. Um, you know, I'm sure some people in the chat here, their favorite Northern Colorado state rep, and I'm being a little facetious there, Representative Ron Weinberg. There's going to be an ethics committee, the first time in since I think 2012. I want to say that there was an ethics committee down at the state legislature to review a complaint filed by Representative Brandy Bradley, another one of our Liberty leaders, against Representative Ron Weinberg on his campaign finance issues. And of course, we know he is from what we've heard, at least, he made a master copy. He got a master copy made, folks, so he could go into everybody's offices when they weren't there. So he was going into legislators' offices. He was, who knows, right? This is what we're hearing. This is part of why there's this ethics complaint. It's pretty juicy. Not only that, but of course, there's a lot of really big questions about how he's spending his campaign money on. He was sponsoring a sports team. He was going to getting a lot of eating out at restaurants up where he lives in Loveland. Lots of different things happening. So a lot of major issues there, a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. But probably the worst thing, at least from what I'm aware of, was how his what I've heard described as a campaign of harassment, including sexual harassment against women down at the state capitol, against legislators, against aides, against staff members. And unfortunately, it's not a new concern. Before Representative Weinberg got his position through the vacancy committee, he actually, or during that election, after Hugh McKean died, actually, Representative Ryan Weinberg had complaints issued against him by some activists and Republican Party insiders, some women who've been part of the Larimer County Republican Party for years. And they were warning people. They said, hey, listen, you cannot get this guy in there. He is belittling. He's got anger issues. He's mean. And he doesn't talk to women in a very good way. So this is all rumor. Don't take what I'm saying for granted, as the absolute truth here. I only know what I know and what I've heard. But at the same time, I've heard a lot of bad things. But I think what's really interesting for people tomorrow at the state capitol on February 2nd at 4 p.m., the House Committee on Ethics is going to meet. Now, it's so interesting on the schedule on the legislative website that they don't really tell you. They just say they're going to discuss the scope of the investigation and their next steps and other business, but they don't say like we're going to be talking about the allegations and then list the allegations on the website, which I think is kind of interesting. It's very opaque. It's very kind of, unless you know what's going on, you're like, I don't know what they're doing in that committee hearing. So interesting stuff for sure. Michael, what are your thoughts on Representative Ron Weinberg? What have you heard?
I mean, I've basically heard what you've heard at this point. I haven't really heard too much inside baseball in terms of the hearing itself, but I do know the hearing's happening. I am very happy that we have the opportunity to listen because Rep. Weinberg on the surface is a great legislator on the surface. He's got one of the highest Liberty scores on Liberty scorecard at a 94%. He votes very well when you look at from a liberty perspective. So very happy with the what a lot of his work down at the legislature. So that's what makes this so disappointing is because we have an individual who has a great track record potentially doing a lot of stuff. And while we haven't investigated it, the allegations are incredibly concerning. And I really hope that we get a resolution of what's been going on. I mean, Rep. Randy Bradley, as you all know, I mean, I say it all the time, she's probably our best fighter down at the Capitol. Nobody really speaks out and takes a bigger stand than her and really lets people know what's going on, quite like Rep. Bradley when it comes to the important issues. So, if somebody is going to take a stand and speak out, I'm going to trust Rep. Bradley. So, but we haven't, at the same time, we haven't seen what actually has happened. So I'm looking forward to seeing the investigation transpire and actually getting down to the truth because these allegations are extremely concerning and they're coming from people who I would consider to be incredibly, very credible.
Yeah, 100%. And I know Pilot in the chat there, you're saying, is this really the biggest fight? But I mean, some of the stuff I've heard that he had said, what I've heard people say, and the fact that he's getting into people's offices without their permission and this and that, it's definitely worth investigating. You can't allow some of this behavior to go on. You got to keep your own house clean before you can really go after the others, I think, at least on some level, if it's that egregious, like Michael said, hopefully we'll get all the truth of the matters down there. But from what I've heard, it's not good news. So much so that Representative Weinberg announced he is not running for reelection. He is not running for reelection here in 2026. I believe it's Amy Parks is running, and then the Democrat is Jackie Marsh, who would be an absolute disaster. She's the former mayor of Lowville, and she's a total commie. So it is important, I guess, also Pilot for the bigger picture of in terms of okay, he's not going to run. Well, who's running to replace him? And then we have a Democrat running. So it's a big picture about what's going on. It is an important thing, and I think Weinberg's seat is relatively safe, but it's not entirely safe either. I think it's going to be a big target, knowing there's an opening there. So yeah, I think it's interesting news. It is one of the biggest stories, and very interesting that this week, tomorrow, on Monday, February 2nd at 4 p.m., they will start this process for this ethics. Anything else on this one,
I'll just say
Michael, before we move on? Yeah, go ahead.
one last thing I'll say is I'm glad you mentioned the fact that Rep. Weinberg's not rerunning. We have an ethics investigation. Everything's going to come to light. And the fact that he decided not to run tells me that there is something that makes me believe that there is something that we're going to uncover that is extremely concerning enough for him not to rerun. So I don't like that he's not rerunning just because it means that it just basically makes me believe that a lot of these accusations are likely credible. Again, we don't know they are for sure or not, but it makes me concerned that they actually are credible.
Definitely. Any other news we missed, folks? Please let us know in the chat. Anything else big going down to the state capitol this week? We're going to talk about legislation separately, so we won't bring up those bills. But let's start with we got some time here before Senator Zamora Wilson joins us at 7:30. So let's go ahead and jump in here to some of the bills being heard this week. So, folks, this is so important. This is where you can speak, where you can provide testimony. And this is really where the rubber meets the road here in terms of the new laws coming down the pike here for our state of Colorado. So tomorrow, Monday, February 2nd, in the Senate. Now, this is a floor on the floor, so there's no opportunity for you to speak there, but I still needed to bring it up because it is important. Senate Bill 4, and I saw a lot of people down there at the state capitol this last week for Senate Bill 4. We'll just pull this up briefly here. But that's one of the most egregious anti-gun bills we've seen this year and we've seen in years, expanding the list of petitioners for a protection order, basically giving more opportunities for people to confiscate your firearms through the government, including healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, K through 12 schools, institutions of higher learning. And folks, excuse me, Tom Sullivan during the committee hearing admitted that if they file this, you will have no idea who actually filed that against you. It'll just say the cops will show up at your door and they'll say so and so school, so and so institution petition the judge, and the judge agreed to take your guns away, and we're going to take them from you. You're not being charged with a crime. You're not being arrested. They're just saying you don't deserve to have the right to defend yourself without actually going through a trial, without actually going through any type of due process. It is an absolutely anti-American, egregious disgrace to Colorado and the United States of America. So bad news. It did pass out of committee 3-2 this last week. on Tuesday, and now it's going to be going to the floor. So they're moving this thing fast, I think is really interesting as well. They're moving it fast. So February 2nd, folks, on Monday, if you get a chance, tune into the Colorado channel on YouTube where this is all live and you can watch it live. I'm really hoping we're going to get some good speeches from some of our pro-liberty senators down there telling us about this bill and really making a stink about it. We need that. We need them to speak up for us. And we're going to see what the Democrats say in terms of what they're saying about this bill. So it's very important to pay attention tomorrow in the state legislature. Even if we can't participate, we can still have a power outside of the legislature by taking video clips, letting people know what's going on. We need more marketing. We need to let people know this is happening because one of the biggest faults we have here in Colorado is very few people are aware of these anti-liberty, anti-gun laws that are coming through, especially so fast here in the first couple of weeks of the legislature. Any other thoughts on Senate Bill 4, Michael?
I'm really glad that you brought up video clips for this one because this is going to be one of those key pieces of legislation that's going to affect the 2026 general election. So make sure that you keep these clips somewhere where you can easily access them at a later date because there's going to be a lot of people speaking and you're going to need these, especially for these key races. Think of Senate District 3, Senate District 11, for example. Those are going to be key races that we're going to really try to push hard. And if we can show that these people actually don't care about your constitutional rights, for example, your right to face your accuser, then these people to actually you can basically let your friends and neighbors know that these people actually don't care about your constitutional rights. So this is a critical piece of video evidence for everybody going down for yeah, everybody come November.
Definitely, yeah. People have to pay for this. We have to watch how the senators vote. In particular, we got Senate District 11, Tony Exum. He's in one of the most competitive seats, so I'll be surprised if he votes for it. We got Janice Marshman, who probably will vote for it because she is so extreme, but she's in one of the most competitive seats up in Senate District 15, also in Loveland. So it's really important to pay attention to see how they vote, track this, inform the voters, and get organized. This needs to be a rallying cry for people to have a big impact this coming election. So that's Senate Bill 4 being heard tomorrow in the state Senate on the floor. So tune in for that, and I'll be watching closely for sure on that one. Now, also tomorrow on Monday, February 2nd, we have the House State Civic Military and Veterans Affairs Committee meeting, and there was two important bills I wanted to talk about. I think we can get to one here before our guest joins us, but I thought this one was extremely interesting, and the other one is a really good bill that I'm sure we're going to hear about more tonight. But this is Senate Bill 1038, County Commissioner Redistricting. So it's very interesting. I don't know how good or bad this is. I've been part of a redistricting committee up here in Weld County last year, and it was really interesting. I learned a lot about the county, and it was a great process to be a part of. But basically, the state government really sets how county commissioners are going to be appointed, how districts are going to be drawn. And what's so interesting about this bill, I know we got people from all across the state here on this stream, but there's only a few counties in Colorado, including Arapahoe, El Paso, and Weld, that actually elect their county commissioners based on districts. So pretty much from everything else I see, they're all at large. According to this, it says currently Arapahoe, El Paso, and Weld counties conduct county commissioner elections by district. And every 10 years, those districts change due to the census. So each of these counties had appointed an independent redistricting commission supported by advisory committees. I was on that advisory committee during the last time they did this, but this bill will change that a little bit. So the bill will require that the county commissioners appoint independent redistricting commissions made up equally of members affiliated with the two largest political parties and members not affiliated with a political party to develop redistricting plans. County commissioners may not serve on redistricting commissions. County commissioners must direct the redistricting commissions to approve one final plan or at least three final plans for approval by the board. Each redistricting commission is required to adopt a composite formula to determine district competitiveness. The bill removes the role of advisory committees that currently support the county commissioner redistricting commissions. The bill clarifies that it applies to counties whether or not their home rule counties. So very interesting to see how this is going to work. But it is important because, county commissioners is really important to Liberty, right? We want to make sure we get good pro-Liberty county commissioners in there. So very interesting to see how this is going to change things. I don't know enough to know if it's bad or good, but what do you think about this one, Michael?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of curious. I'd like to know more. I mean, like you, I haven't necessarily made my mind up on this one. I do hope I a little concerned that this bill could take away from home rule a little bit, but at the same time, um, just because we're kind of mandating how these these boards are going to be running from the state level, but at the same time, I mean, there's already an existing policy from the state on how these boards are supposed to operate. So, I'm okay with this. I mean, you're this bill also does take into account both Republicans and Democrats as well as unaffiliated, and that is important. That is important makeup for Colorado because when you look at the way we are currently made up, I believe just over half of Colorado is currently unaffiliated. So I do think this is at least attempting to, how do I say this? I believe they are at least attempting to address Colorado's demographics the way it currently is sitting. And then it also doesn't necessarily say we need an equal amount of Republicans or Democrats. It does kind of leave it up to the individual boards that are appointed. If I remember correctly, we're talking about who's becoming more and more Democratic. El Paso, who's pretty purple these days, but does lean right, and then Weld is fairly right. So you're going to have two that are going to lean Republican, one that these days is going to lean a bit more Democratic. So it's not necessarily saying you need equal members of Republicans and Democrats uh, as unaffiliated, but it does say we do need these boards would need a independent mix of all three. So I'm very curious what other individuals have to say about this one.
Yeah, and Lou, I think we do have time here to talk about one more bill before our guest. So, in the same committee, Monday, 1:03 p.m. And folks, if you have interest in any of these, you can tune in and listen. Now they're showing video from these committee hearings. You can testify remotely. You can definitely have your voice heard, and that's what we're encouraging here. It's very easy to do. You would just go up to committees and really public testimony options. That's all you got to do, folks. Committee is at the top, public testimony options. You can pick the bill number, you can pick the committee time, and then it'll take you to it. But I really want to bring up this bill because it's two of our favorite legislators from a liberty perspective down at the state capitol, Representative Scott Bottoms and Senator Mark Baisley. House Bill 1049, prohibit the use of personally identifying feature. So, anytime I see a bill with them on, I'm sure it's going to be pro-liberty, but let's just briefly, so this is a little cheat sheet, folks. If you go to the fiscal note, sometimes that description's a little bit better and gives you more background, like we saw with that other bill. So let's just read that summary real quick. The bill prohibits the unlawful use of personally identifying features in digital depictions, including a person's fingerprint, voice print, a scan or record of the eye retina or iris, and a facial map, facial geometry, or facial templates. This is like your facial recognition and biometric type stuff. Using one of these features without a person's permission is a class 5 felony, and using a feature without permission to intentionally harm the person depicted is a class 4 felony. Harmed persons may bring a civil action for unlawful use of these personally identifying features. Certain exceptions are provided, including for state and local governments. Bummer there. News, public affairs, or sports broadcasters certain commercial purposes. Now I can get why, some of that, but come on. Nonetheless, I think it is pretty interesting to see that the unlawful use of using these things, people would have to get your permission. So, this is a workaround our state government uses, right? Or law enforcement uses. They buy your biometric data from private companies, which is another bill Kindegraff's running. He's trying to stop. But basically, the government doesn't have the same, private companies don't have the same level of restrictions and constitutional limits that businesses do. So you have all these organizations and entities out there who are maybe getting facial recognition or scans of your eyes, and then they can turn it over to whoever, and that's not necessarily good. We're in this brave new world, that's for sure. So I think this is a good pro-liberty bill, folks. If you have time to testify tomorrow, remotely or in person, it starts at 1:30 in LSBA. That's a Legislative Services Building that's across the street south of the state capitol. These two bills are going to be heard. Two very interesting bills. I'm going to try and tune into this whole committee hearing because these things affect us, right? This affects the future of our state, the makeup of our future counties, and the commissioners who represent us at the county level, and then of course, how they're using our data. So very interesting stuff. What are your thoughts, Michael?
No, I think the overall intention of this bill, I haven't talked to these legislators about the bill yet, but I think the intended purpose is to stop fraud, and I think that's something everybody, pretty much everybody, can get behind. We don't want to We want to let people, use their freedom of speech, be creative, do what they want to do, but there are certain limitations that we need as a society. And if, somebody else is basically stealing your identity and then putting it out there to use your identity as a form of advertisement for them, I mean, that's essentially fraud. So I would love to see. I like this bill. I definitely agree with you. I don't like some of the exceptions, like state and local governments. I don't know why they necessarily need an exemption. For example, I don't like them using or news public affairs. I don't necessarily agree with all of these exemptions, but overall, I think at its basis, it is a good bill.
Yeah, and Mike in the comments or in the chat brings up a great point. He says, "Would this end one-party consent for phone recordings?" That's a good question. I don't know.
Ooh.
That's a very, very good question there. Would people be know if because that's your voice print potentially, right? So, if you use that without their permission, I don't know. That's a great question. I definitely will have to reach out to the bill sponsors to find out. But that's why it's important to pay attention, folks, right? That's why it's important to show up at these committee hearings and get involved and be part of the process here, because there are a lot of big questions about this. You know what I mean? But yeah, very worrisome stuff for sure about the future of these of people using our biometric data and our facial recognition. But yeah, of course, the fact that they're giving the government an opt out of it is something I'm not really happy about. Of course, I'm a little less excited about this bill than I was previously. But we're about a minute away from our guest joining us here. So I just wanted to pull up, just take a quick look at some of her bills. Now, folks, it's so important. You can click in and see what people have sponsored so far this year. So, Senator Lynda Zamora Wilson has been one of our Liberty leaders so far in her short time at the Capitol, representing El Paso County in Senate District 9 on the Judiciary Committee and the Senate Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. So the use of surveillance technology by law enforcement, I'm really excited to hear her talk about that bill. This is huge, folks. Somebody in the comments talked about minority report, excuse me. And this is, yeah, I mean, the government's using surveillance technology without our permission on us, and we're becoming a police state in terms of surveillance, right? Surveillance state. So that's interesting. Ban government access for historical location information database, Senate Bill 70. Modifications to voter registration, Senate Bill 58, and the Parental Equality and Child Empowerment Act, Senate Bill 27. So four fantastic bills, I think, from what I've seen so far. Great stuff. I'm really excited to hear from her, and especially these two, where she's really challenging the government's ability to surveil us. Senate Bill 70 does have some Democratic sponsors, so that bill is very likely to pass. Unfortunately, I don't see any other sponsors on Senate Bill 71, but we should be having Senator Zamora Wilson joining us here, and I'm really interested to talk about it. And folks, we will be taking questions in the chat. Senator, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, yeah. It was very nice to meet you at the Capitol on Tuesday during the Senate Bill 4 hearing. And then if you haven't met Michael Vance, Michael, this is Senator Zamora Wilson.
Hey, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Well, awesome. Well, how has it been? You are a recent addition to the state legislature, and I'm wondering, just first off, what have your impressions been?
Yeah, I'm the new kid on the block, but I won't sing for you. But I'm bummed. Okay. It's people ask me, are you enjoying it? And I don't know how to respond to that. I will say for 4 to 5 years, I've been on the outside giving testimony. It is so nice to be inside and in the fight and having my voice heard and not silenced after 2 minutes or completely silenced like some people do when they limit the testimony like they did in 1312. It was at House Bill 1312. I was one of the 500 that was silenced when it was going through the, what was it, the Senate. Right.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I've just hearing great things and seeing the legislation you're sponsoring is very exciting. And I think a lot of the pro-liberty community here in Colorado is really excited about you being one of our newest senators down there. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the legislation you're sponsoring this year? I'm really curious about your bills.
Yes, so the first one, I call it the Peace Bill, and that's coming up on Tuesday. This is a parental rights bill. I was really surprised when I learned about in the current, well, let me back up. When you have couples that are going through a divorce and they're trying to decide custody of the children, the judge, it's very open for the judge to decide who gets custody. And unfortunately, in these cases, you can get it's very contentious, very emotional, where you might have a parent say slanderous things about the other parent. That's not true. And right now, the judge can take that and rule that that person is abusive based on hearsay, and there's no verification of proof. So what this bill does is it stipulates that if there's going to be accusations of abuse, there has to be proof in it. And so it starts off with 50%. And it was really shocking because I had talked to so many parents that were negatively impacted by these types of situations, and how quickly their parental rights were destroyed, and they were guilty and had to go back in courts to prove their innocence. And I'm sorry, but in America, we're innocent until proven guilty. And then they had to incur all this money and time in courts to prove their innocence, losing time with their children. The stories are just so sad. And we all know how important it is for children to have both parents in their lives. They become more productive citizens. Oh my goodness. As far as the list of things, there's so many benefits, right? It protects them in their emotional and psychological safety. This bill also, it's imperative that we are looking for children's safety. So it has those safeguards that if there is abuse, the judge can step in and make a judgment. And everything's documented too. So, and that's also I learned was really critical in these cases, is that that the judge will document if there is abuse. So what else? Let's see. So already stated two parents are the strongest and most important factor in a children's life, and children do better across every metric: health, safety, well-being, when both parents are involved. And of course, it's just mutually beneficial. I think I'm just like, it goes without saying how I call it the Peace Act, because I also think that when there is justice, you have less fighting between the parents, versus if there's injustice, there's going to be a lot of battles. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So I think it promotes more peace too. What else? Less domestic violence. That ties in with what I just said, right? Less battles, less domestic violence. And yeah, there's more information on that, but do you have any questions?
Yes, Senator Wilson, or Zamora Wilson, excuse me. I'm kind of curious, what is the current status of the parental custody split in Colorado? Because I know a lot of people in other states. I grew up in Iowa. I've got a friend who's dealing with a lot of issues because his two kids were he adopted those two kids from his wife, and then his wife left him, and then made a bunch of accusations that he couldn't necessarily disprove
Mhm.
in court, and then she ended up getting full custody and left him in a world of pain, particularly when it comes to child support. Is there anything what so I'm kind of curious, what exactly is the status quo in Colorado today, and how do we prevent certain situations like that in your proposed legislation?
You know what? That is an excellent question, and I will have to run that down for you. But that is an excellent question. I don't know the stats on that, like how they typically fall out. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, just because I know that there's, depending on the state, there can be a lot of abuse within the divorce courts, and I've heard multiple dads, particularly from my home state, talk about how terrible it is once they have a divorce and and their child is involved, and they don't really have any rights, they don't have any legal recourse, and it ends up being, like you said, very unfair. So that's what makes me excited about your proposed legislation.
It was shocking when I found out that, wait a minute, that's not in the law. I thought they automatically start at 50-50 and then work from there. Um, and like I said, the heartbreak stories that I heard it just kills me because I also, not only, I'm a parent and I can't imagine being separated from my child, but we as citizens know the importance of healthy relationships between children and their parents, and they just become better citizens. That's documented well as far as how beneficial it is.
Absolutely. And there are situations where you might have a parent where you might have one parent who might be a bit of a deadbeat parent, whether that's the mother or the father. So I do like that your legislation still allows for the courts to
Oh,
make a decision that is best, that has the child's best interests at heart.
absolutely. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's one of the biggest determinations of a child's future is having both parents in their lives. And family court's a nightmare. Thankfully I've never experienced that, but I've know so many horror stories and so many kids who come out worse, just it seems at least, right, going through this family court process. And it is in very much in need of reform. And I think this makes a lot of sense. It's hard to think anybody'd be opposed to the Peace Act, Parental Equality and Child Empowerment Act, Senate Bill 27. So excited to hear that one's coming up. And people should definitely speak in favor. That'll be on Tuesday, February 3rd, in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee at 2 p.m. Senate Committee Room 230 or 352, excuse me, Senate Committee Room 352 up on the third floor. So encourage people. And if this is an issue that maybe affects you and you don't necessarily want to speak, I'd still encourage people to tune in and listen and get some information and see what's going on. It's a good starting point. So thank you, Senator, for sponsoring this bill. I'm really curious about your Senate Bill 71, the use of surveillance technology by law enforcement, because, I'm a very pro-liberty. I'm a libertarian. I think that I'm very concerned about the future of us and our rights here in Colorado and across the country with surveillance technology used by law enforcement. And this is a fantastic bill. I'm going to share it in the chat for people to look at it. But can you tell us a little bit about it if you don't mind?
Sure. And a little bit of background. How many of you are driving along and you hit this intersection and you see a brand new camera and they just seem to be popping up left and right? And it gets pretty concerning. I've had many people approach me as far as I feel like we're in a surveillance state. And so I thought, well, let's see what I can do. There obviously needs to be a balance. I support our law enforcement. I have family members who are in law enforcement. And all this technology protects them, it protects us. But there's got to be some guideline or guardrails, because here we have AI coming on board. And so let's see the inventory. They've got body cameras, they got cameras on their cars, they've got red light, speeding, license plate readers, drones. I'm missing something. And we have AI coming on board, right? And which brings an unknown to all this in the equation. And so I had tried to reach out. I went to and talked to the chief of police in Colorado Springs, told them the concerns of my constituents, and I was able to get a tour of, I call it mission control room. And it has you walk into this mission control room and it's a map of the entire city. And you can see where every red light camera is, or wherever camera is. And if there's a call from dispatch, they have detectives in the room, and they can, if they say there's a stolen car at an intersection, they can locate that camera. That camera can pivot, zoom. It can read license plates about a block away. It's really impressive. But anyway, you can get the gist of the concern. So what I'm what this bill does, I call it the SAFE Act, the Surveillance, Accountability, and Freedom Ensured Act. So it regulates law enforcement's use of surveillance technologies to balance public safety and privacy. So what this does is I'm not taking the capability away from them, which is really important because I'm getting pushback from the law enforcement community. And I'm like, I'm not taking away the capability. I'm just putting a balance of how are you storing the data? What are you capturing? What data are you capturing? How long are you storing it? Is it secure? Who's watching it? Who has access? And of course, we talk about deleting the data. I've researched what other states are doing. So the things that you will see in my bill is pretty much representative of what other states have done. Another addition that I put in this bill, it's been so frustrating for me. Like I said, when you see a new technology pop up on an intersection and you're like, I didn't vote for that. So what this bill does is every time they either add to the technology or they increase their technology, new technology, they have to inform the public and say, what kind of impacts? How is this going to impact your security? I know we can do that through our county commissioners, but by the time we see it at the county commissioners and there's a contract rolling in, it's too late. We have no say. Does that make sense? So I think it's really important to have that transparency for the public and seeing how they're going to be impacted.
Senator Zamora Wilson did some research on you before this interview, and I thought it was really interesting. According to my research, you've been an analyst for the Pentagon. It says you've been for possibly what it said was 25 years. I don't know the exact date on that, but for specifically the Pentagon. But I'm kind of curious how your experience with the Pentagon has influenced your position on these bills.
So I served 25 years. I've done analysis in satellites, flight tests, in economics. I've been read in classified programs, even higher than top secret. And I know about national security. I know some of the things that we need to secure, especially information. Back in, I think it was 2009, we had all of military members, when we apply for classified programs, we fill out packages and packages of information. And they go back and they even talk to like a roommate from college, trying to see if we're not compromised and we're trustworthy for these programs. The Chinese had gotten into that system and got all that data. You think of thousands and thousands of military members and their families and all their connections. The Chinese got a hold of that. So big breach in the information, our information. And so this ties into this bill as far as protecting our information. And of course, we can go into, this is sensitive information. There's a lot of ways I can approach this as far as it's some of the argument is going to be presented, well, these cameras are out in the public. That's public. We're not violating the law. And it's like, okay, that's true. And how many people in public have a cell phone with a camera? And someone said, are you going to take away their cameras too? Like facetiously. And I'm like, there's a big difference. No, I'm not going to take people's cameras away. They can take pictures of me in the public, but they can't arrest me. You guys have, I'm talking specifically to the law enforcement, you have this capability and they're all over and surveilling everything about us and capturing all this information, which can be sensitive. They're responsible, on another note, they're responsible for securing PII, personal identifying information, right? And there's if you use that information inappropriately, or if you're not secure with that information, there's penalties. Well, that's the same with our information too. So once again, putting guardrails up on our information and protecting our information. Hopefully that's clear. There's a lot that this bill covers, but tying it into what I experienced in the military.
Oh, that's awesome. It's such an exciting bill, and I think from a freedom perspective, a liberty perspective, those of us who are watching this surveillance state being built around us, and all of this craziness going on, I mean, I'm super excited. Just briefly, this bill says, "quote Facial recognition systems are only used after a warrant is obtained or in exigent circumstances when there is an imminent threat to public safety. Traffic cameras and automated license plate readers must only be used in public spaces and for specific enforcement purposes such as traffic violations or identifying stolen vehicles, and drone cameras are operating in compliance with Federal Aviation Administration regulations." So this bill would do a lot to really rein in the surveillance state here in Colorado, ensure that our rights are being protected. It's a step in the right direction for sure. And of course, it's not shocking that I'm sure law enforcement, district attorneys, probably even counties and cities are pushing back on it because they want to have a control grid. I mean, that's the reality of it, folks, right? The government wants more power, more control over our lives. They want to be able to monitor everything we do. They don't care as much about the Constitution as they should, in my personal opinion, at least. So this legislation is so important. And Senator Zamora Wilson, I see there's no other sponsors on the bill. Do you think there's a chance? I mean, come on, I think the Democrats should support this, because they're using ICE is getting into flock cameras and this and that, right? You would think that these are nonpartisan concerns in terms of our privacy, but I mean, is there any chance that there's going to be some more support for this bill in under the Gold Dome?
I hope so. In turning our attention to, was it Senate Bill 70? And this is really, the way I stumbled on this one was pretty shocking. So I had my bill and I was talking to someone and they had knowledge of, excuse me, Senator Amabile's bill. And they were like, you need to talk to her. And you should have seen my face because I was like, what? Amabile? Really? Long story short, yes, her bill is very similar to mine, except it deals more specifically with location. So they want to make sure that individuals' locations are secured. And you can imagine this is the weird arena or area where the left wants these protections for different reasons. Then, I mean, I want these protections, but for different reasons. Can you guess? Yeah, they're going to protect the illegal aliens. I'm concerned about protecting citizens' information. Different reasons, same outcome. So some of my constituents were like, Lynda, what are you doing? And I'm like, read the bill. Please read the bill.
I love the fact that you're on these bills. I think it's pretty. I mean, I don't think that we are as concerned as we should be as a society when it comes to our Fourth Amendment, and we're letting the use of our cell phones dictate the I don't want to say de-escalation, but we're allowing our cell phones, and I love my cell phone. I don't have anything against my cell phone. I love it. I have it with me right now, but can't even, yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Um, but people are getting kind of lackadaisical when it comes to the rights violations that can happen from our cell phone, from our privacy, because people do attempt to spy on us and everything that we're trying to do in our everyday lives. So people
Right.
say, "Oh, it's the government. I don't care. It's just the government." And I'm like, "No, that's a very, very concerning factor as well. We don't want to give the government too much power to spy on us and see what we're doing, because that's an absolute threat to our individual liberty and our privacy as well." So, I really appreciate that you're on these bills. Another bill I want to talk to you about is your voting bill, that you're going to change voting registration. So I'd love to hear more of your perspective on this bill, and if you could possibly explain to everybody what your intentions are.
Okay. So you had mentioned on as you were doing the rundown about the issue with unaffiliated voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way thanks to Jenna Griswold. The way that when you go to register for the DMV, you're automatically registered as unaffiliated. Because they'll go, do you want to vote? Do you want to register to vote? You say yes. And so you're automatically put in as unaffiliated. There's so many issues with that. Number one, you get people who, when they go to vote, I actually heard one of the voters, I just got done voting, and I heard this one person say, I'm a Republican. Why is the state dictating to me that I'm choosing my party affiliation? So you get people that are angry, thinking that the state is dictating their party affiliation. But number two, you get voters who they get the card back. You register, you get the card back to verify that you're registered. And if you want to select a party, you mark it and then you submit the card. Most people don't do that. So what this does is it overestimates when you look at the numbers of unaffiliated voters, that's not an accurate number of who truly want to be unaffiliated. There's actually people who either they don't know to change it or don't have the time, lazy, whatever you want to call it. And what this does is, as you know, when the ballots get printed, it's expensive. And so what this bill does is, there's a couple things that it does. I have two bills, so I've got a couple things that's going through my mind. I can't remember the number of, I know I have the smart election bill, and there's the what is it? The voters elect bill. So I believe it's in the voter elect bill where we're going to change how the DMV registers people. They register people, but instead of putting them in the unaffiliated group, it will put a pause on it and waits for that person to send the card in. And then once they send it in, they verify that whatever party, if they truly want to be affiliated, they have that choice. So then it's more accurate. The unaffiliated number is more accurate, and that helps reduce costs because the unaffiliated voters get two ballots, right? A Democrat ballot and a Republican ballot. So this will also not only improve the numbers and be more accurate who is truly Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated, but it can reduce millions of dollars too if people will decide. They actually are making that choice. Does that make sense? I was kind of all over the place, but
yeah, I think it makes sense.
That's one point. Another point is if a person hasn't voted in 2 general election cycles, they then become a pause. And that actually ties into what the federal laws state that what a state can do. It's just we haven't been following it, but it says we can put a pause on it. And if the person wants to vote, it's just like we can flip them on there, they get their ballot. But that also will save money, millions in printing of ballots.
So this could potentially clean up the voter rolls in about 8 years.
Yes. And save money. What a concept.
That's great. It's very creative, and it's a great bill. Senate Bill 58. I shared it in the chat there. Modifications to voter registration. Good stuff. I mean, we definitely need to clean up the voter rolls. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. El Paso County Clerk also helps him with that. So Steve Schleicher. And another citizen who is very concerned about election and the cost of sending our ballots too. So it was just putting these great ideas together, and I really like these two bills.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Bills you're sponsoring, I mean, they've been great. They've been really noteworthy, and it's really exciting to see, as you know, a freshman basically. I know you were there for the special session, but really going through your first year down there, have some amazing legislation. I'm just curious, as the new girl on the block, as the outsider here, what do you see like the pressure on some of the other legislators, right? Because you have a couple bills that law enforcement doesn't like, and
Mhm.
DAs and all these power brokers, right? They don't like it. So I'm sure, Senate leadership, Republican leadership might not like it because they want to please the police, they want to please the cops and this and that, regardless if the bill's a good bill or not, right? They just have they have a different agenda that way. So I'm just really curious, as somebody who's new to the process, what do you see in terms of the influence from either law enforcement or other governments or lobbyists, or what do you see in terms of like who's got the most influence down at the state capitol? And please let us know what's like the behind the scenes of what's happening.
Regarding the law enforcement and the DA, the force is strong. Yeah, there's it's the natural tug and pull, right? Of, hey, this is a tough arena, but it's something that we need to have discussions on as far as putting up the guardrails. We're again, I will foot stomp this over and over again. I'm not taking the technology away. You can use it. It saves lives. It protects our law enforcement, but there's got to be some guardrails. And so there is a tug and pull on those interests. I used to teach economics at the Air Force Academy, and I used to tell the cadets, if you forget everything that I've told you, just remember this one thing: incentives matter. And boy, do they matter.
I, when it comes to this legislative session, a lot of people are expecting a lot of wild stuff. We've already seen a lot of wild legislation already. For example, Senate Bill 4, Senate Bill 1005 on the House side, which was Senate Bill 5 last year. We see a lot of stuff when it comes to, I believe it's Senate Bill 18. That's another crazy bill when it comes to the abolition of parental rights. Uh, I'm kind of curious. What are your expectations for this legislative session? Do you think that we're going to see something calm down, or do you think we're at the very beginning and we're going to see it ramp up as the legislative session happens?
Yeah, I think it's going to be ramping up. I think it's an interesting. I've been watching the legislature for 4 to 5 years, and this it just seems to get crazier and crazier. Um, and I don't know, after the what had happened with Charlie Kirk, the tragedy there, and then you saw a movement in our country, especially with the young people. Um, you get the sense, at least at that time, that we were moving more in on the Republican side or the conservative side and fighting for our constitutional rights and taking a stand and saying we've had enough of this nonsense that's been shoved down our throats. And I think the left sees that. And so for me, I'm thinking this is going to be a Hail Mary kind of thing. They're just going to throw everything at us with the expectation that they know that they're going to lose seats. That's just what my gut says. So it's just chaos. Crazy bills.
Crazy bills, and it's so important for people to be informed about what's actually happening down at the Capitol there and get the word out, because I think that's one of the biggest things is people just don't know. But Senator, do you have a few more minutes to stay with us, or do we need to let you go here?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm just curious, as a economics professor, a former economics professor, I mean, what do you think when you see bills like this price fixing bill and some of these other things that come through the legislature? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your perspective from an economics point of view?
Well, one of the first things that I asked President Coleman was, can I bring in a whiteboard? Because I just want to go through and teach these people. He's like, no, we can't have any props. And I was like, darn it all. Because the instructor in me, I just want to teach them because oh my goodness, anytime you get the government involved in any market, it just causes inefficiencies and it actually does the opposite of what the intended goal is. Like Lorena Garcia and her price controls. I'm now thinking of California. California, I could teach about the failed policies of California and how their rent controls or all the regulations just causes inefficiencies in whatever market you're talking about. Here's another one, especially with the environmentalists. Now, I'm all for protecting our environment, but it goes to the point of just extreme where it just becomes you're doing the opposite. So in California, I had a home when I was stationed there. I was selling the house. In order to get the house up to snuff, there was new laws passed. One of them was toilets had to flush 0.6 something something gallons. I had to rip out 3 perfectly good toilets, throw them in a landfill, yay, environmentalists, and put in new toilets that didn't flush uh, at all. You have to sit there and flush, which does the exact opposite of what the intended goal of conserving water. And of course, that adds to the cost of selling a home. Now take that and apply it to Colorado, where they're trying to get rid of gas. Think of all the gas stoves, water heaters that are going to do the same thing. People are going to rip them, perfectly good gas stoves and water heaters out of their homes, throw them in a landfill, and it's going to be more costlier home prices. That adds up to prices. I could go on and on. I'll pause.
How do we combat this with 2026 being expected to be the worst legislative yet? How are we as citizens supposed to combat the craziness from the Gold Dome?
So we need number one. Okay, so we're outnumbered, right? The thing that we have in our toolbox is messaging. We have got to get them on the record. The crazy things they say and hopefully make it viral. Get these sound bites, get these videos, educate people. I think it's so critical to educate people, get people to testify. I remember when I first started testifying, it was specifically on election integrity. But once I started sitting around waiting for the election bills or whatever policy was going, I was looking at these other bills. I'm like, my goodness, that is unconstitutional. I'm going to testify on that one too. So it's amazing how you learn this. Most people don't realize how unconstitutional these bills are or how they are just stripping our rights, whether it be parental rights or Second Amendment, freedom of speech. They were, censoring and dictating, being the word police. It's just insane. You're like, this is not happening. And when I would see it, I would then tell my friends, and they didn't believe it. And then I would send them a clip of the testimony and check it out, and they were like, "Wow, I never would have believed it had you not showed me." So we need to get the word out. I can't overemphasize. It's easy, everybody. It's easy to register. It takes only 5 minutes to register to give testimony, and you can give testimony remotely in your pajamas while you're drinking coffee in your kitchen. It's really easy, and we need your support.
Awesome. Well said. Yeah, definitely. We encourage people. And that's why part of the reason we host these live streams every week. We're going over some of the most important bills and trying to empower people to speak out because it is important. We have to have a voice. We have to do something. Even if it doesn't necessarily change the votes, it gets the messaging out there, like you were saying. But Senator, I'm curious, is there anything from now that you're on the inside, maybe that surprised you? about the state legislature that maybe you didn't expect or didn't know about before you became a senator? Or is there any other information that maybe like people need to know about how things really work on the inside? Maybe misconceptions that people have? I'm very curious on your perspective there.
Oh, you kind of got me there. I mean, there's there's some legislators that their bill is their baby, and if you don't sign it, it's like you're calling their baby ugly, and they take offense to it. Me, with my bills, hey, if you're signing on to it or you're supporting it, great. If you're not, please tell me how I can make it better. I am an open door. I'm very flexible. And having been in the military for 25 years, I think maybe that just makes me have a little tougher skin. But yeah, that's a tough one. There is some workings of you're able to see how the machine runs a little bit. And I'm trying to learn, but also use my skill set. And because there's not many economists there or folks with my experiences and my background. So hopefully I can insert that specifically to tomorrow with Senate Bill 26004. So Senator Sullivan said, this isn't going to cost any money. There's no physical note. And the economist in me, and I also mentioned this during testimony, this is going to cost a lot of money because you're dealing with the potential for not only increasing demand, you're increasing the number of people who can file an ERPO. So you're increasing demand. And that is going to trigger more reports. I was told by one of the lawyers, yeah, but because one of my concerns was if there's a false reporting. Like if someone filed on me and I didn't do anything, but now I'm found guilty and I have to show my innocence. Here we go again, right? This is one of those bills where it's backwards. We should be innocent until proven guilty, and this is a gun grab. And I have to go through all the courts, loss of time and money. And one of the lawyers said, yes, but the state will provide a defense for you. I said, oh, and who pays for that? She goes, the state. I said, yeah. And where's the state get its money? From the taxpayer. So, I mean, that's just one thing. That doesn't include all the storage fees of the weapons, the transfer fees. And you'll hear me tomorrow. I've got some economics to back it up that are monetary costs and non-monetary costs. That's going to be thousands. So this is not free.
Is there a way to possibly motion to get the fiscal note revised so that way they can properly allocate the needed resources for Senate Bill 4 to be enforced?
That's an excellent question. I asked that and I didn't really get a good response, but I will try to run that down also because it's going to cost the taxpayer money, and it's going to cost people who are fighting for their defense. It's going to cost money because they may not even take the state's defense. They might because they don't trust they don't trust them. They want a good defense. They want their weapon back. And it's going to be taken by force too. That's just the crazy thing. It's frustrating.
Crazy stuff. Just real quick, while I got you on the call, and because you're an economist, I know you don't have all the background on this, but I'm up here in Greeley, and we're fighting against a city-owned stadium. The city of Greeley wants to build a sports stadium for a minor league hockey team. Also attached to it would be a hotel and water park. indoor water park here in dry Colorado, up here in northern Colorado. But just from an economics perspective, I mean, could you mind sharing just briefly why this is a bad idea? Because I actually have some Republicans who are elected that you actually serve with who are endorsing this idea, and it's absolutely shocking to me as a liberty-minded Coloradan that we have people who are saying, yeah, it's a good thing. The city should own a hotel because it's going to bring jobs. The city should own a stadium because of all this potential revenue and everything that's coming to the city. If you don't mind, just briefly share any thoughts on that. I'd really appreciate it.
Is it the role of the government? No. And anytime, like I'll just repeat myself, it's really simple. Anytime you get the government involved, it brings inefficiencies. They are not efficient. You get it's bloated. It'll just be a horrible management. There's plenty of examples where you can see where the government is operating. Well, I could talk about the military too, but you see a lot of inefficiencies, very expensive. I'm thinking of when I was doing flight tests, and when you have contracts, you've got a contract, Lockheed Martin or whatever. And as you're trying to be efficient with, we're supposed to be responsible with the taxpayers' money. There is a lot of inefficiencies, thousands of dollars. So that's going to be a disaster if the government's running it.
Agreed completely. I appreciate it very much. Michael, do you have any final questions here for the senator? We'll let her get back to her night, and I know you got a busy week ahead of you. So really excited to listen to your speeches. Try and make some clips of your floor speeches. I think that's so important, and really excited to see the impact you're going to have during the rest of the session. But Michael, any final questions for the senator?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Maybe it's too late to talk about this, but do you have any upcoming legislation you're planning on proposing? Possibly a sneak peek that we could have before it actually gets introduced, or a um, draft of the bill might be released?
Well, like I said, Tuesday is my first bill. That's the peace bill, the parental rights. I don't think I have. I'm wondering if 70 and 71 are going to be next in the queue. I'm also really excited about the election ones. Stand by, because I also had other folks ask me to join them. So let me see on my list here. Oh, there's also one. So we've had issues in Colorado Springs, obviously with the Democrats' lacks of crime laws. We have the businesses here in Colorado Springs are suffering because of crime, and it's becoming costly. They have to hire security guards. They have to build fences. They have to bring in technology, cameras, and then you have the homelessness and the drug use. And we're seeing an increase in youth violent crimes. And so talking with one of the judges, they're frustrated because they can have people come in with reporting in, and they can't do anything. There's failure to appears. So I have a bill that deals with failure to appears. I'm just trying to give the judges something. You would think one failure to appear is a bad thing. There's people that come in with 10 and 20, and it's just like this revolving door, and the judges can't do anything. And so this bill that I'm working on it's still somewhat of a draft. I'm still trying to get it working on it, but it's to help the judges be able to like after 3 or 5, I can't remember, 3 or 5 FTAs, then the judge can set bail, PR bond. And there's a second amendment bill that I'm also jumping in on, so protecting our right to bear arms. And I'm curious about the forfeiture. I think Representative DeGraff, that one might be one I'm jumping on too. And the Fourth Amendment is not for sale. Did I already mention that one? Yeah, that's another
Not yet.
one. The Fourth Amendment is not for sale, and that is a bill that deals with the selling of our information. And again, the the law enforcement do not like this. They don't like this bill.
Well, that's awesome. Senator, so thankful that you're serving because you are presenting some of the most pro-liberty legislation we've seen for a long time. The state Senate has not been a good place for pro-liberty legislators, so I'm very excited to see you there to be a voice for our freedom and our rights and our liberty. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you for standing up against the surveillance state as well and standing on principle and standing up for the Constitution. So just very thankful for that. And also thank you for joining us tonight. It's really refreshing to hear everything you had to say. And any final thoughts before we let you go here?
Thanks for having me. And everybody, please testify. We need your help. We really do. And I need your prayers. There's so much going on in trying to decide. A bill could be good, and then all of a sudden they could throw amendments on it, which totally changes the whole outcome of the bill. So you need that discernment as to, wow, this just changed from good to bad or bad to good, and everything's moving really quickly. So um, come on in, give me input. Oh, also, if you're going to give testimony, and they only typically give you 2 to 3 minutes, but if your testimony is longer and you want me to ask you questions, email me questions and I will ask them. If you're there in my committee, I will ask those questions and extend your testimony.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's amazing, and what a great resource to have you there. Keep up the good work. Please let us know if there's any other important news we should be aware of. But just thank you so much and keep up the good fight. But appreciate you. I'm sure we'll see you down at the Capitol sometime soon.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you. So great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome. Perfect. Take care.
Good night.
Awesome. Well, if you're watching, don't go anywhere, folks. We're still got more to talk about. There's so many opportunities for you to have a voice this year at the legislative session. So many bills being heard this week that you really need to know about. And of course, we'll talk about some of the bigger bills that aren't heard this week, but still give you an update on them. But real quick, Michael, before we jump back into it, any thoughts on what Senator Zamora Wilson had to say tonight?
Holy crap, she's way better than I expected. She is amazing. I I heard months ago when she first got like they were talking about possibly appointing her. I heard a couple people, a couple buddies of ours that are lobbyists say, "Hey, she's absolutely phenomenal. You're gonna love her, and she's even better than I expected." Just that list of bills that she's possibly going to co-sponsor, she's everything that I would want in a senator. So I'm absolutely thrilled, and we need to protect her at all costs.
Definitely, yeah. If people don't know, it seems that the establishment is trying to primary Senator Zamora Wilson, and as you can see, I wonder why. Somebody who's actually standing up for our liberties, somebody who's pushing back against the surveillance state, somebody who's standing up for the Constitution. No wonder that certain people don't like her, is all I can think of. And I'm not making any accusations here, but I know who's running against her, and that person was served in the legislature before and was not good, was not a good Republican, did not stand up for the values that we care about as liberty-minded Coloradans. So yes, protect Senator Zamora Wilson at all cost and show up for her bills, folks. The fact that she's willing to ask you questions that you email to her to give you more time to talk and so you can actually make an impact, that is phenomenal and huge. We need more people like her in the legislature. If we had and more Zamora Wilsons, we'd be in a much better place as a state of Colorado. And I'm a little worried too because Mark Baisley's not running again. You know what I mean? He's running for U.S. Senate. He's going to be done, and then it's like, oh boy, who do we have left? We don't have any good pro-liberty senators left. We have some of the milquetoast moderate Republicans, like some who support publicly owned sports stadiums, but nonetheless. Let's jump back into the presentation. What do you think, Michael?
No, I completely agree. Let's get back into it.
Awesome, folks. Don't go anywhere. There's so much to talk about. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it exciting. Fast-paced, action-packed. This is the place where you're going to become an expert. So, folks, we were talking about the House State Civic and Military Veterans Affairs Committee that's being heard meeting at 1:30 tomorrow. But let's jump over now to The next committee hearing also on Monday. So this is interesting. We were talking about this one, Senate Bill 5, the Rights Violation and Immigration Enforcement Remedy. So this is the one where they can sue you or sue law enforcement if they interfere with somebody's constitutional rights when they're arresting somebody who's in the country illegally. So this is, think of the protesters out there. This is the whole idea, right? It's to interfere with immigration enforcement. That's the real idea behind this bill, and it's being heard tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. in the old Supreme Court, Monday, February 2nd, the Senate Judiciary Committee. If you pay attention to this one, folks, pay attention to this one. Let's just pull it up briefly. Rights violation and immigration enforcement remedy. There is a fiscal note here now. Let's take a look real quick. The bill allows individuals injured during a civil immigration enforcement action to bring civil action against an individual participating in the enforcement event. Of course, they say it's not really well, it says it will cost us some money here, $125,000. I'm sure it cost quite a bit more than that. But the bill allows individuals injured during a civil immigration enforcement action to bring civil action against an individual participating in the enforcement event who violates the U.S. Constitution, regardless of whether or not the individual is acting under official authority. So basically, civil immigration enforcement is defined as people who are investigating, questioning, detaining, transferring, or arrest person for federal civil immigration law, to not include actions committed by a peace officer who is acting within the scope of the peace officer's duty consistent with state law. So that's the idea, folks. They're really trying to protect the protesters and the people who are trying to interfere with immigration enforcement. That's the reality behind this bill, folks. Of course, you got Zara Zokai, Julie Gonzalez, Javier Marbury, Mike Weissman. I mean, the worst of the worst, folks. The worst of the worst. Don't be fooled by trying to protect our constitutional rights. This bill is going to be heard tomorrow in the Senate Judiciary. It's going to be very telling to see how they describe this bill, to see what they say it does, and maybe hopefully we'll get some real truth about what they're actually trying to accomplish with this bill. I'm very curious to see if they slip up and really admit what's happening. What do you think, Michael?
No, I'm kind of curious. I want to see as many people as possible get down to the Capitol to to push back against this bill. Uh, Absolutely insanity. These people brought these individuals over via our tax money, promised them a lot of goodies, and now they're giving these goodies. I mean, for example, look at the program Omni Salute, and we then the American people push back as much as Colorado doesn't like it. And now ICE is getting involved because there's a lot of people who aren't even necessary who don't actually belong in our country because they came here illegally. And then so that results in a problem where ICE has to get involved and get rid of these individuals. The people that they're going after are rapists, murderers, individuals who are doing the worst of the worst to our communities. And then we have these individuals like the Highlands moms pushing back and um uh trying to protect these individuals who are destroying our communities. So we need everybody we can possibly get down to the Capitol to push back, say no on this bill, and then record. This is another one where we need to record everything that was said in this committee. Let Colorado know that these individuals do not care about the safety of your family or the rights of your families.
Yeah, definitely. No, good point, Michael. And I'm really hoping, maybe we get some really bad clips for Senadora Julie Gonzalez, as well as some of the others. It's not hard for Yara Zoki to make a fool of herself. So maybe if we get a clip of that, would be kind of fun to get out there. But yeah, this is where we pay attention. And just like the senator was saying earlier, it's about messaging, right? So if we can get clips, we can get them to admit something and really talk about how they don't care about the rights of the individuals who are legally in this country, like Michael was saying. We can actually have an impact that way. Even if we can't stop the bill, we can get public pressure, we can shift the narrative, and we can have an impact. And I always think too how far the left is willing to go and how many years and how they just work. They don't give up. They're just it's nonstop action from them for so long, and it's just dogged. It's just like, and then on the conservative side or the liberty side, I'd even say it's like people are like, we're not gonna. It doesn't matter. I'm just not gonna show up and this and that. And it's like, well, it's like the people who want to win end up winning. You know what I mean? In the long term, sure, we might lose the battle, but nonetheless, the battle's not over in one legislative session. So that's the reality of it, folks. Just want to jump over to Tuesday. So Tuesday, this is a bill we didn't talk about last week, and you're going to see why. But on Tuesday in the Senate, so this is the whole floor of the Senate, and I'm really excited to see if Senator Zamora Wilson and some of the others have a good statement on Senate Bill 32. And I got to thank Pam Long for bringing this one up and getting it in front of a lot of people's attention on such short notice. Promoting immunization access, and I know I said that wrong, but promoting immunization access, concerning the promotion of immunization. Now, this is a huge issue, folks. Now, just check this out. First thing you need to know about this bill. I mean, the list of the people involved are just some of the worst there. But check this out here real quick. Look at the bill history. This bill was introduced on the 26th. So the 26th last week was Monday. So that was after our live stream last week. That's why we didn't talk about it. It was introduced last Monday. And then in the committee hearing on the 29th, so they introduced it on Monday, they get it heard in committee on the 29th on Thursday, and now it's going to be on the whole floor on the 2nd. They are moving this one so fast, and I think part of the reason is they do not want people to oppose this. They're trying to do everything they can to make sure that people don't have the opportunity to rally against this. This is the truth about our state government, folks, and the Democrats in control down there. So this is being heard on the Senate floor on Tuesday morning. This is, let's just look at all this text here, but let's just look at the fiscal note real quick, because this is the first time I know a lot of you are hearing about this bill. Senate Bill 32 expands access to vaccines by broadening who may administer and prescribe, authorizing state agencies to rely on guidance from specified medical professional organizations. Just trust the experts, folks, trust the experts. Updating immunization program funding flexibility. So more handouts to your NGOs that everybody loves. Revising liability protections related to vaccine administration and distribution, among other changes. Ooh, I'm very curious about the liability there. But yeah, this is a bad bill for people who are very concerned about the dangers of vaccines here in Colorado. So there's a lot to it. I'm not going to read the section on the cervical cancer vaccine, but let's just find a couple things here to highlight here. Basically, you know, if you've been watching what's happening at the federal level with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., there's been some pushback at the federal level about the necessity of some of these vaccines, but Colorado is on the side of big pharma here, folks. So check this out. Ad vaccines is a category of drug that pharmacists can independently prescribe, dispense, order, and administer, with the state board of pharmacy required to establish rules governing this authority. So they're just going to give pharmacists and circumvent the doctors, of course. Updates liability provisions related to vaccines required for school entry by allowing compliance with either immunization schedule published by the CDC or established by the State Board of Health. So, right, the CDC came back under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and says, we are not going to require the same things we used to. So now they're saying, well, you know, you can also go with the State Board of Health here in Colorado, which of course we know is going to be much more pro-vaccine. So interesting stuff. Authorizes the State Board of Health to adopt and amend rules governing the infant immunization program, including which vaccines are required after considering immunizations or after considering recommendations from the ACIP and specified national medical professional organization. The bill authorizes the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment to rely on immunization guidance from national medical professional organizations, in addition to ACIP guidance when establishing and administering immunization requirements, and authorizes the Department of Health Care Policy and Financing to purchase vaccines recommended by those bodies, in addition to vaccines recommended by the ACIP. So basically, they don't like what's happening at the federal level, and they're figuring out workarounds to do this here. Removes a prohibition on the use of state money for infant immunization programs if the state does not receive federal money. So they're going to be using that. Wow. Extends the limitation of liability for claims related to handling, storage, or distribution of vaccines to pharmacies and manufacturers, and limits liability to cases involving negligent failure to meet recognized standards of practice. Manufacturer liability limitation provisions are removed from the law for claims brought on or after January 31st, 2029. Very curious about that. Creates the Adult Immunization Act. This bill is not a single subject bill, folks. These bills of the state legislature are really only supposed to do one thing at a time. This bill is totally against that, against the spirit of that. Establishes limitations on liability for administration of vaccines to adults, providing immunity from civil liability when vaccines are administered in accordance with the State Board of Health schedules, without contraindications and when using generally accepted clinical methods. For claims brought on or before January 30th, 2029, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, manufacturers, and providers are not liable for injuries unless the injury results from negligent failure to meet recognized standards of practice. Manufacturer liability protections are repealed for claims brought on or after January 31st, 2029. Very curious about that. Is that a good thing? I don't know. It might be, but very curious about that. What do you think, Michael? What do you think about this one?
I think these are the bills that erode the trust in the pharmaceutical industry. These are the bills that erode the trust in your own local doctor. Um, a lot of modern medicine has been historically a miracle. That doesn't necessarily, but there's also a lot of issues with modern medicine, particularly vaccines. So, what did the federal government do back in the 80s? They gave vaccine manufacturers legal liability, and look what it's done today. It's absolutely eroded the trust in vaccine manufacturers. Then they've been allowed to get away with lower quality vaccines, and at this point, you are seeing less and less people trust their local doctors and their vac and big pharma because of the consequences of particularly situations like COVID. I would say one of the most harmful things to the pharmaceutical industry was legal liability for COVID, and then the way the government came in through crony capitalism and provided all of the legal buffers and profit making capabilities to these individual manufacturers. I never took a COVID vaccine. I don't know a lot of people that did, and it's because of the way the government's response to big pharma was. And in fact, I don't know if you remember this, but Pfizer CEO even came out and said that anyone who spreads misinformation at the time should be locked in a cage because they should serve jail time. This is the garbage that is destroying the medical industry, and I no longer trust a lot of modern medicine because of it. So this is only going to continue to erode the public's trust in our healthcare system. So if you can, let a friend know. If you know somebody who is impacted by a COVID vaccine, if you know somebody who is impacted by a lot of different vaccines over the last few years, let them know about this bill. Tell them to speak out, because if you don't speak out now, these are the types of bills that are going to lead to the hysteria in another COVID event, another health scare. So we need to do what we can today to protect our future and our children's future down the road before it's too late.
And it does have a safety clause, so it'll go into effect very quickly after the session. But yeah, I think usually it's like July 1st or so. But yeah, bad news, I would say. There's a lot to it. It's a very complicated and hefty bill, 16 pages long, but there's 16 different sections to it. So this is totally not a single subject bill. But yeah, very concerned. Love to get more information on it. Very complex subject, that's for sure. Not good, but let's keep moving, folks. We got a lot more to talk about here. So we're moving on to Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, 1:30 p.m. The House Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee hearing housing developments on qualifying properties. Now, this one is part of the package of housing bills that the governor and his cronies in the legislature are pushing. It's not good, in my opinion, here because it's trying to basically override local control. Of course, you got a Bo Snecker, aka Bootlicker, Javier Marbury, Tony Exum, and Julie Gonzalez, some of the worst, but let's just read the fiscal note summary for people. The bill requires local governments. That's always a bad thing when you're requiring a local government and it's coming from the state, right? You're getting rid of local control. You're centralizing political power. Requiring local governments to allow residential development on qualifying properties owned by certain nonprofit organizations, school districts, state colleges, or universities, housing authorities, or transit district or transportation authorities. So this is mean RTD and these little transit organizations can start building housing. It's all about high density housing around mass transit corridors, your 15-minute cities, folks. This is it right here. Bad stuff, folks. The bill requires local governments to allow residential development that do not contain an exempt parcel. A qualifying property can be private or public and is limited to 5 acres of land. So if it's a nonprofit that has demonstrated history of providing affordable housing, so there's all your homeless type of NGOs that are in Denver, or if it provides public transit, or is collaborating with a nonprofit with a demonstrated history of providing affordable housing. And this is school districts who own all these vacant schools because kids are not going to school, public schools anymore because they're so terrible and dangerous. or people aren't bringing their kids there. State colleges or universities, housing authorities, transit districts, a transportation authority. Basically, folks, they're going to allow these places to build high density housing to get more and more people crammed into these areas. And not good. You're not good. Each city should be able to make its own rules, each county, but I don't like the idea of the state coming in and forcing this on people. So I think it's bad news, folks. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, Michael.
Uh, this week, study came out for the first time in decades. Colorado experienced a migrant crisis. We lost, I believe, 12,000 residents, uh, and that's due to policies just like this. These are the types of policies that um, play favorites, but end up creating more housing issues down in the long run. We also know that there's this psychotic 15-minute city agenda within the progressive legislature. These types of policies are continuing us down the road that's going to cause an additional that's going to extend a housing crisis, but at the same time prices are so expensive that nobody even wants to live here anymore. We've experienced a lot of issues, a lot of economic downturn. My wife is a mortgage broker, and we've experienced it the last couple of years. And what I'm seeing, and but what's interesting is the housing prices haven't gone down like they should, and it's because of all the policies that have been enacted by our legislature. So, very, very concerning. This bill absolutely should be opposed. This is terrible, terrible legislation. And on top of that, it's crony capitalist because, as you can see, they're going to give all the money to their favorite NGOs, their favorite quote unquote nonprofits. So if you can get down to the Capitol on Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., I know we're asking you for a lot this week, but hey, if you can get down there Monday, get down there Tuesday, and really, really lay it into these people because they deserve it.
Yeah, horrible bill, bad bill, centralization of political authority and forcing local governments to adhere to these arbitrary state standards. Bad news. Also on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2 p.m., Senate Committee Room 352, the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Agenda. That's Senate Bill 27. This is the Peace Act. We won't go into it because Senator Wilson did a phenomenal job of sharing it. And I didn't notice that at first, but peace is parental equality and child empowerment. So it's basically, spells peace pretty much, but good stuff there. Really excited for this one. I think, the starting point being 50-50 for a husband or for a father and mother makes a lot of sense. Good bill. I really hope she gets some support, folks. Show Senator Zamora Wilson some support there by speaking in favor of her bill at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Really important bill. Any other thoughts on that one, Michael?
I'll end it with this on that bill. The best outcome for a child is having a mother and a father in their family, and if they can get equal treatment, if they can have equal access to both their mother and father in their early developmental years, that is the best possible thing for them going forward. I get it; it doesn't always happen in all situations, but if you can give a kid a healthy, loving, and active mother and father, you're setting them up for their best chance at success in life.
Definitely, definitely. So we're going to jump over to Wednesday, folks. This is all this week, folks. This is what we're going to show you every week, all the important bills being heard at the state legislature. This is in the House Judiciary Committee, 1:30 p.m. on Wednesday, House Committee Room 107, so on the first floor there. This one we won't spend, I don't think, a ton of time on, but it's still interesting. It is the expanding criminal adding municipal jails to county jail oversight requirements. Now, that might sound good on the surface. For one, you can look at who's sponsoring it. Not always a disqualification, but it definitely gives you an idea, right? A heuristic. But nonetheless, this bill requires municipal jails to comply with existing jail data collection requirements, standards, and oversight. This is the big thing, though. This bill limits a municipal jail to holding a person for no longer than 72 hours. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a libertarian. I'm very skeptical of the police in general and the government. But, folks, we have such a massive crime problem here in Colorado and such a massive issue where now local governments, municipalities cannot enact any stricter penalties than the state allows. And the state's penalties are very loose. and very weak. That's why we're having so much more crime and these criminals getting back on the streets. It's absolutely insane. So now all of a sudden, city jails, sure, let somebody out if you don't need to hold them. But if there's a serious issue and they need to hold them for more than, 3 days, they should be able to, I would say, at that local level. But again, it's that centralization of political authority. And then, of course, this idea of really trying to control what the city jails do. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some good that can come of this. I understand that, but still some serious concerns, especially in the day and age we are in Colorado with so much crime and so much soft on crime policies. This just seems to be another soft on crime bill. I could be wrong with that. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. It seems like they're trying to make a lot. They're trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole. Doesn't necessarily make sense to me. I wish that I wish they would let local municipalities have more local control, but they're really just trying to legislate from the top down how these local municipalities can handle their jails. And there's a real issue with that. What works for Aurora, as they even mentioned in this, at a certain point, they mentioned Aurora as an example in the fiscal note. What's best for Aurora is not necessarily best for what's going on in Southeast Colorado, Western Slope, Northern Colorado. Uh, there's a lot of different areas of Colorado. It's very diverse, and what works in one place is not going to work in the next. So we need to stop legislating with a top-down approach. We need to do what's best for all of Colorado and give them as much local control as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, there was an issue in Pueblo jails earlier last year, excuse me, where people were getting enough food. They said kids were starving, and it was probably and it wasn't an issue. I mean, it was investigated. There was a problem. So don't get me wrong. Maybe there needs to be some oversight, but I'm still very skeptical and still have some concerns. I think it is a very reasonable position to take. But let's keep moving on here, folks. We got Thursday in the House Business Affairs and Labor agenda. We're almost through with the week here. House Committee Room 112. Senate Bill 1005 or House Bill 1005, but it's the same as Senate Bill 5 from last year. Pardon my confusion there or misspeak. But yes, this is the Worker Protection Collective Bargaining, the bill that would empower unions, basically eliminate the Labor Peace Act and make it so that Democrat aligned unions are going to get more money, taking money out of the pockets of hardworking Colorado workers and give that to unions, which are predominantly using that for Democrat political purposes. So this is a horrible bill. This bill is going to only increase the coffers of Democrat campaigns and Democrat candidates. And it's so wild because Jared Polis vetoed this bill last year, Senate Bill 5, and they're going to run it again. So I don't know if they were working some sort of negotiation. I thought they were going to wait until Jared Polis was out, but I think it's a horrible bill. I did a video with Natalie Menton on the previous version of this bill last year. Happy to share that if people are interested. But yeah, bad news being heard this week. So pay attention to this one, folks. This is going to be a huge fight with the business community. And, you see businesses leave Colorado. No surprise there. What do you think, Mike?
Oh, I completely agree. When it comes to our businesses, Coloradans are struggling more than they have in decades. So the fact that they want to get rid of the Labor Peace Act just tells me that there is an agenda behind everything. All this is going to do is destroy our businesses. It's gonna take away choice from workers, which is extremely ironic because the Democrats love to say they're on the side of the little man. They love to say that they're on the side of the workers. Yet the Democrats are trying to take worker choice away and make it more expensive for um the average everyday blue collar worker to survive because you're going to be forcing these individual workers to pay union dues. And then what happens when the union decides to strike? That individual is going to have no choice but to stand on a picket line. They're not going to have the choice to go to work regardless because some ridiculous individuals get their shorts in a wad all over something that's going on uh, at their factory, at their occupation. Uh, One other thing to remember is, do you guys remember Hostess Cupcakes? We all know Hostess Cupcakes. There used to be a factory here about 15 years ago. Their union decided we're going to take a stand. Everybody's getting underpaid. We're going to strike. Well, guess what happened? Because of their little strike, forced by the union, that was the final straw for Hostess. Hostess had to declare bankruptcy, and for there was a what 6 to 8 month window where Hostess really wasn't on the shelves and convenient and in any stores because it was basically a non-existent company at that time. It wasn't until another company came in, bought the rights to Hostess, that they were able to actually come back as a brand new company with the same exact name and bring back a lot of those products that we all know and love, like Twinkies, Ho Hos, Ding Dongs, what have you. So um, I consider unions to be an absolute threat to the economy, threat to people's jobs, and uh, this is another one that on Thursday we absolutely need to oppose. Hey, Brandon, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Anybody?
Yeah, I
Okay,
got you.
change the microphone there. But yeah, no, you can show up to these committee hearings, folks. You can even watch and listen, become informed, become an active participant. Maybe you're running for office. Pay attention to what's happening during these committee hearings and speak if you can. I think it's important, especially if you have future political ambitions. But also on Thursday at 1:30 p.m., the House Business Affairs. Oh, same one there, just a duplicate. All right, so that's what we got for the week. That's the important bills being heard this week that you can have a voice on. Of course, this video is on YouTube, so you can go back and get some screenshots. I'll try, if you follow Free State Colorado on X or Facebook, I'll try and keep you updated throughout the week about what's happening. But yes, very important stuff, that's for sure, folks. So this is the part of the live stream every week we do where we're just going to go a quick little lightning round here through some of the most important bills that have been introduced this year and just give you a quick update. We're going to tell you when they've been assigned. So even bills that aren't being heard this week, we're going to let you know when they're going to be heard in the future if they have a committee assignment yet. And then as we get later on in the session, we'll let you know, hey, did this bill get killed in committee? Did this bill get signed by the governor? Did it get vetoed? So this is basically the segment that you're going to find every week, giving you the update, a quick little update on all these bills. So the Peace Act, the Parental Equality Child Empowerment Act being heard this Tuesday, as we talked about. We'll keep you updated on that one throughout the process. Expanding the Colorado Cottage Foods Act, that's the tamale bill from Representative Ryan Gonzalez. No committee hearing date yet. I checked all of these earlier today. So the most up to date, there's no date yet. We will keep you up to date on all of these, though as well. The Second Amendment Protection Act being heard on Tuesday, February 17th in the House Judiciary. Of course, we'll talk about it as we get closer. That's still 2 weeks out. Maybe we can get Representative Bradley or Representative Brooks to come in and talk a little bit about that. I'd love to have them on. Um, but yeah, that's being heard on February 17th. So mark your calendar, folks. Mark your calendar there. Michael, you want to read through some of these?
Absolutely. Ban government purchase of personal data from third party. This is one of the bills that we talked about last week, Rep to Graph. Very good bill that's going to, very good anti-flock, pro-privacy bill. Rep de Graaf's going to need all your support on this one. I'm really happy to see him get bipartisan support on this bill. And let's hope that we can really help make some positive change in Colorado through this bill.
Yeah, no committee a date assigned yet. So we'll
Next bill, back to school sales tax holiday. This one will be heard in House Finance on February 19th upon adjournment. This is a fantastic bill. I wish it would go further, but I'm happy to get what we have out of it. Where we're looking essentially, they're going to create a sales tax holiday for certain goods and services. It's expensive to bring to send your kids to school, and this is really going to help people out who are struggling in Colorado, especially.
Yeah, I'm really excited on this one too. Thursday, February 19th. Keep going if you
All
could.
right. Removal of wind energy from state energy goals. This is a bill from Rep. Pelton. As we all know, the Public Utilities Commission, through our legislature, is actively destroying energy affordability in our state, making it extremely tough to even pay our electricity, and we need that to survive. That's not something that's going to be optional for us. This bill will be heard on February 18th in the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee, and let's hope that we can remove some of these ridiculous un ineffective forms of energy usage from our energy goals as a state. Next one, challenges meeting 2030 emissions reduction goals. Bipartisan support. We have a lot of leadership in both the House and the Senate on this bill. Essentially, this bill is going to allow uh, it's going to allow energy producers like Excel, Black Hills, etc. Not necessarily Excel, but a lot of these smaller independent energy producers to extend their timelines if they're not going to be able to meet the climate goals set by the POC and the legislature with in an affordable manner. So if it's going to make it more expensive for Colorado, this bill is going to allow Coloradans to basically breathe a little while they work to meet those quote unquote energy emissions requirements.
Now, no schedule yet.
Next bill, prohibit use of personal identifying feature. This is the one we talked about earlier, and this will be heard February 2nd, tomorrow, in the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs at 1:30 p.m. All right, we're getting into our bad bills that we've been tracking. Senate Bill 5, rights violation and immigration enforcement remedy. We talked about this one earlier. Will be heard tomorrow, Senate Judiciary at 1:30. Next bad bill, expand list of petitioners for protection order. Senate Bill 4, we talked about this one last week. Thank you to everybody who did speak out and testify. This one was heard last week. It passed and now it's on to second reading. It will be heard tomorrow at 10 a.m. And make sure to pay attention to the Colorado channel tomorrow on YouTube. Next bill, House Bill 261054, protection for workers' safety. Another useless, pointless bill. It does have a committee hearing date. It is Wednesday, February 18th, and will be heard in House Business Affairs and Labor. Let's hope, even if this one passes, we do not see a Senate sponsor. House Bill 261043, Transportation Network Company discriminatory practices. It will be heard February 19th. House Business Affairs and Labor. Basically, they are trying to attack these rideshare companies. Uber already said last year if they didn't veto the bill that passed that if it wasn't for Poles' signature vetoing that bill, we would have seen Uber pull out of Colorado. This is very concerning. This bill is going to make it more difficult for a lot of people that rely on ride shares, not only as a way to get to and from different destinations, but those who rely on it as a means of survival. House Bill 1036, local taxes on vacant residential property. This bill is essentially trying to mandate this bill is essentially trying to mandate people do stuff with their property that business owners may not be inclined to do or may not be economically viable and this is very bad for people who are dealing with, I believe, short-term rental properties. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Brandon, but it's going to be heard Monday, February 9th in House Finance.
This is basically the anti-second home bill. So if you have a property up in the mountains or a second home that you keep vacant for a certain amount of time, they want to tax you more because of that. It's
That's right.
absolutely insane. It's an egregious assault on our property rights. And to say, listen, folks, there's no reason for you to own more than one property that's not any property in Colorado that's not being occupied. It is insane and deserves all of the pushback as much as possible. And of course, you got Tatone, who's running for a treasurer, just one of the most economically ignorant people we have in our state government. Horrible, horrible bill. And then this is go ahead.
One thing I want to say about this is another way to force people to do things that the state doesn't want them to do with the property, that the state wants them to do with their properties. Remember a couple years ago when there was that 33% tax on Airbnbs? If the Airbnb wasn't necessarily used, they were going to, the state was going to charge 33% property taxes on those individual properties. Uh, Terrible
Yeah,
bill, terrible
absolutely insane.
legislation.
Horrible stuff there. I think you froze up for a second there, Michael, but you're back now.
Perfect.
Awesome. But yeah, horrible stuff. Totally egregious abuse of the government, not the proper role of government whatsoever. Horrible, bad news. House Bill 1012, consumer protections to promote fair market pricing, the anti quote unquote price gouging law, saying that you can't charge a certain amount of money at airports, stadiums, this and that. So stupid. Zoke, one of the least ignorant, one of the most ignorant, excuse me, one of the least knowledgeable people in our state government. No dates yet, so there's no dates on this, folks. That's why we're going through them here. House Bill 1011, the banning pet sales at pet stores, basically making pet stores illegal in Colorado. No committee hearing yet. House Bill 1005, yep, being heard on Thursday. The collective bargaining, the union bill. Legal protections for dignity of minors. This one's interesting. This is the one where basically it says you have to use the kid's name, and if that has to be a relevant factor when determining parenting time. So if the father doesn't like the fact that your kid is now all of a sudden using a girl's name, and there's a custody dispute, the judge is required to use that. Now it's already happening. Don't get me wrong. This would even make it worse, and it'd be compelling the judge and the court to really focus on that. So bad news ultimately. The immunization access just added this one. We're going to be keeping track of this as it goes through the process here, but being heard Tuesday on the House floor or Senate floor, excuse me. So keep an eye on that one for sure. And that's what we got. That's what we got, folks. Lots of interesting bills going on. Lots of interesting information happening. Hopefully, you're getting some use out of these live streams. You can always watch it back if you miss us sometime. You can watch it 2 times speed on YouTube, 3 times speed. Please share it. Get more people. We're going to have more legislators joining us pretty much every week, and community leaders giving us insight you're not finding anywhere else from anywhere in Colorado. So it's going to be a blast. We made it through our 9 o'clock timeline, but 2 hours every Sunday night. Share this with people. It's on YouTube forever after that. Well, relatively speaking. So share it to people, get people out there, watch it extra fast if you need to, and then take some clips, do whatever you need to. But hopefully this is a resource. We have to become a free state. We will become a free state, but we got to get involved. We got to participate in the process. Really appreciate everybody joining us. Michael, how did it go this week, do you think?
I thought it went great. It was exciting to meet Lynda Zamora Wilson for the first time. I've heard about her for a while, but to actually get down, sit down and speak with her, hear her knowledge. She's got a very diverse background. I would not have expected somebody who's got as much military service, especially somebody who's worked for the Pentagon like she has, to have a worldview like she has, because so many people go in there and then they just spout these talking points. But for her, she's actually seen what it's really like there. She's seen how the sausage is made, proverbially, and she understands yet she still has that sense of protection for our Fourth Amendment rights. She understands what it means economically to do what the Colorado State Legislature is doing to our state economy. I was extremely excited after that conversation. So let's hope we can get more Lynda Zamora Wilson and not less Lynda Zamora Wilsons in our state legislature.
Yeah, awesome. 100%. We got over 300 views this week on YouTube, according to my YouTube Studio app on my phone. So over 300 views is awesome. Keep sharing this and getting it out there, folks. This is hopefully something, I mean, this is something we know nobody else is really doing, and hopefully we can encourage people and inspire people to get involved, have a voice, show up at your state capitol, and look these legislators in the eye. It's so empowering to be 10 feet away from them, look them in the eye, tell them how foolish they are, how ignorant they are, how wrong they are, and to see their reaction, to be able to do that, there's something cathartic about it, and there's something so valuable in doing it. and then use this. We have to keep track of everybody and how they vote, and we have to use it against them come election time. I truly believe that some House seats and Senate seats can flip this year. We talked about that on week 2, if anybody wants to go back and check that out. But yeah, there's so much opportunity, folks, here in Colorado. The first step is becoming empowered, becoming knowledgeable, and getting organized, right? We got to reach out to the voters, reach them, and give them the information about what's happening in our state government, how their legislators are voting, how their legislators are making their lives more difficult. And then we have to get organized, and we have to be empowered and use this information to flip some seats, get the bad people out, protect the good ones, and get more good ones in there. But we can do it. I'm confident of that. We cannot give up. And if you're watching this, you are part of the resistance.
Wolverines.
Definitely. Michael, any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Any final thoughts from the chat there?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody who's stuck with us. It's been 2 hours now. Appreciate every single one of you who watches week after week after week, or even if you're here for the first time. Greatly appreciate you stopping by. You're becoming one of the most informed individuals in Colorado about how your own government works. So thank you for being with us every single week, and we're gonna win. And from here on out, this is where we're really gonna see the legislative process ramp up. So let's get excited for how they're going to try to screw us over in Colorado. And remember that for the 2026 election, let your friends and neighbors know that they have the opportunity to do something and that we need their voice at the Capitol. And if they can't give us their voice at the Capitol, they can at least fill out their their voting ballot in November. No matter what, you can always fill it out. Even if you think it's a waste of time, fill it out anyway. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And, big things coming from Free State, Colorado. We're talking about some in-person events throughout the rest of the year. So keep an eye out for that. Sign up on the email list if you're not already. I'm going to get organized with people across the state, and we are going to make a huge impact this year. We're going to do it, folks, and just need your help to make it happen. But in-person events in some of the largest cities across Colorado every month, I think we can get organized and mobilize people that way. And then I do have a video of my interview with Victor Marks coming out tomorrow, so that'll be really interesting. I hope you find that fascinating. But right now in Free State, Colorado, there's basically 6 videos a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's an interview that comes out every single week. I already got several already filmed with some of our new candidates for office this year, some of the most important chances we have to flip some seats. And then, Tuesday, Thursday usually are my solo videos. Maybe we'll do a video clip show from this live stream, and then Sunday, the live stream itself. So literally 6 days a week, you got Free State Colorado videos. And yeah, follow on social media. Let's get empowered. Let's get organized. And let's take back Colorado, and not even take it back, because we're not taking it back to some of the anti-liberty stuff we've seen in the past. We're going to move forward to become pro-liberty and free, and keep your tax money, and keep your property rights, and keep your guns, and keep your family, and let you build generational wealth and build a business and build a future for yourselves and your family. That's what a free state looks like, and we're going to get there. So appreciate you, everybody. Never give up, never surrender. We're going to do it, and excited to have you along on the journey. But appreciate you, Michael, as always. And yeah, we'll talk to you next week, folks. Come back and join us.
Thank you, Brandon. We appreciate you too. Bye,
Awesome.
everybody.
Bye.